On April Fool's Day, the Scottish Government will enter a new authoritarian era. In a bid to eliminate hatred in Scotland, First Minister Humza Yousaf has pushed through his new hate crime laws, some of the most draconian legislation the country has ever seen. Citizens can be arrested for things they say in the privacy of their own home. Anyone in Scotland can make a complaint about anything they overhear or anything they read online. If an offensive comment is read in Scotland, the new law says it has been published in Scotland. And so no one is safe, particularly since the criteria appears to be whether one finds something offensive and perceives it to be motivated by hatred. This emphasis on the perception of the victim means that there's no evidential threshold required for something to be recorded as hateful. And even if not criminal, we could find ourselves branded with a non-crime hate incident. If this happens to you, you're not going to be told, but if you apply for a job that requires a disclosure and barring service check, such as teaching, you'll probably not get that job. So here's Humza Yousaf defending the practice of recording non-crime.
In terms of incidents and hate crime incidents, it's important that they are recorded, because what it does is it gives police an idea of where there might be spikes in hatred. That behaviour might not be criminal, but they can then see a pattern that is simply done so police can see if there's a rise in anti-Semitism, for example, or a rise in homophobia right across the country. It's important that police are able to monitor any patterns of hatred that might emerge.
Now, we already know that this probably isn't lawful. In December 2021, the Court of Appeal ruled that the recording of non-crime hate incidents is plainly an interference with freedom of expression. And earlier that year, the Home Secretary Priti Patel had instructed the police to stop all such investigations. And in March 2023, the then Home Secretary Suella Braverman published new guidelines reminding police that the recording of non-crime must be stopped. But in spite of all of these things, these government decrees, a High Court ruling that's emphasised its illegality, the College of Policing in England and Wales carried on, and the Scottish Police are clearly following suit. When Yousaf's bill was first proposed in early 2020, the Scottish Police Federation said that it would be akin to the, quote, policing of what people think or feel. The Law Society of Scotland called it, quote, a significant threat to freedom of expression. Roddy Dunlop QC warned that jokes about Scotsmen, Irishmen and Englishmen could fall foul of the law. And the SNP are making it very easy for people to snoop on their fellow citizens. They're setting up hate crime reporting centres, which include libraries, a mushroom farm in East Lothian and a sex shop in Glasgow. You can even report someone anonymously. What could possibly go wrong? The police have even created a mascot to promote their new law, a fluffy red hate monster who looks like a reject from Sesame Street. And this really does have to be seen to be believed.
He'll make you want to have a go at somebody. A neighbour, somebody on the street, on a night out, security guy on the door, somebody in the chippy, your taxi driver. He'll make you want to vent your anger, just because folk look or act different for you. The hate monster wants you to feel what you need to show you're better than them.
Well, I think that tells us an awful lot about the low regard in which the SNP hold the Scottish people. They treat them like children, basically. They think they ought to be coddled and protected from nasty words. Let's not forget, it was the SNP that attempted to assign a state guardian to every single Scottish child through its failed named persons scheme. And if they don't trust parents with their own children, why should they trust anyone to speak their minds? And the front cover of the Herald newspaper last week ran with this headline, police told to target comics under new hate crime law. So according to leaked training materials, police are to keep an eye on comedians and actors who might violate the section of the new law that covers the public performance of a play. When questioned in Parliament about this aspect of the bill a couple of years ago, Humza Yousaf claimed that it was feasible for the far right to stage a theatrical performance in order to stir up hatred. Now, I don't know any neo-Nazis myself, but I'm pretty sure they're not fans of amateur dramatics. And while the police in Scotland have claimed that they'll not target performers, this seems very much at odds with the training they've been receiving. An article for the BBC News quotes a lawyer claiming that performers and writers must trust to luck that they're not prosecuted, and that the police have pledged to investigate every complaint they receive. Well, thankfully, activists never make vexatious complaints to the police about their ideological opponents in order to silence them. Oh wait, actually they do, don't they? All the time. In fact, many have already boasted that they'll be reporting J.K. Rowling to the Scottish Police on the 1st of April for misgendering India Willoughby. And if all it takes to get a visit from the police is calling a man, then we are truly in dark territory. Police Scotland is already stretched to the limit, which is why it recently announced its proportional response strategy. That's to say, the police will no longer investigate vandalism or theft if the crimes are unlikely to be solved. And yet, they will now be expected to investigate every single complaint made simply on the basis of people feeling offended. Now, the truth is that hate speech laws are simply not compatible with the values of a liberal democracy. These are new blasphemy codes, and they will set a precedent for any future government to outlaw certain forms of speech. No government that ever passes hate speech laws has ever been able to successfully define what hate actually means. I mean, I find it hateful and offensive to criminalise citizens for their free speech. And if I complain, will the Scottish Police investigate themselves? Or they could start with Humza Yousaf. And who's to say that a future government might not decide that criticism of their policies constitutes hate? When it comes to the statute books, we really don't want such nebulous and subjective ideas. Of course, the Scottish Police have a history of authoritarian overreach. In February 2020, a Freedom of Information request by The Times revealed that police in Scotland were keeping a database of objectionable gags posted online. An offensive joke may be reported by someone, a spokesperson said, but not amount to any criminality, so we would log this as a hate incident. In 2016, a tweet by Police Scotland Greater Glasgow, this was also on April Fool's Day, claimed that officers would be knocking on doors if citizens posted anything that was hurtful, illegal, untrue, unkind, or unnecessary. They failed to consider that if all unnecessary tweets were deleted, Twitter would cease to exist. The problem is that Scotland is essentially a one-party state. The SNP retain their stranglehold over the country because a substantial proportion of its citizens desire independence and are willing to overlook the party's myriad failings in all other aspects of governance. But it's becoming increasingly clear that with the SNP in power, genuine independence is the last thing the Scottish people are going to get. Instead, they've empowered a party with authoritarianism baked into its DNA, a party that seeks to control what its citizens say and think. This new hate crime law will doubtless be weaponised against people simply for holding opinions that the elite do not like. And even if such complaints don't make it all the way to court, this won't stop the police from invading your privacy, seizing your phones and your computers, and putting you on watch lists that may very well prevent you from getting a job. As many people have noted, the process is the punishment. And given that we know there are many activists within the Scottish police force now emboldened by the state, things are going to get a whole lot worse after this new law comes into effect on April the 1st. So speak freely while you can. You've got a couple of days left. And after that, the police will be cracking down on anyone who knows the difference between men and women and is willing to declare it out loud. To give just one example. Although it has become a cliché to cite George Orwell's 1984 in such circumstances, that's only because it is so apposite. The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command.